All right, it's go time and welcome back, guys. After a month on the road, I'm back home in my office, as you can see in chat, in the middle of nowhere, North Dakota. Now, throughout the last, 4 weeks plus that I've been gone, we've trained up over 120 new people to Autodesk Fusion, from everything from CAD to the CAM side of the software, whether it be mills, lathes, napkin sketches, or redoing engineering drawings like always, which has led a lot of people to be curious about how is it that I design parts as well. Everybody says I'm an outside the box thinker, so I'm going to give you guys this knowledge at the end of the day. I see a few of you guys out in chat, so I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. But before I do, real quick, I do want to let you guys know we are actually repeating the same kind of concept that we did down at Champions in Houston. Now, we got Timco a little more north of them in Oklahoma over by Tulsa to allow us to use their facility to do the same classes once again. So if you're new to Fusion, you want to come by and check it out or meet yours truly, feel free to get signed up now. You can either shoot an email over to info@, or you can go ahead and go to our website and you'll see that tab. So let's jump into this. So as you guys can see here, I have a lovely drawing in front of me. It is one of the most basic parts. However, I am going to use my theories and my ways to show you guys basically something as simple as an L bracket, how to improve your workflow regardless of what you do. So as you can see here, it's nothing more than 3 inches long, 2 inches tall, and 1.5 inches wide. And then we have a 1/2 inch thickness throughout with a 1/4 inch radius. So the first couple of things I'm going to do is I'm going to start a brand new file inside of Fusion. Now, some of you are going to question my choice of the white background. As you guys can see here, you will notice when we're sketching, it's much easier for you all to see at the end of the day. So anybody new to my channel knows anything you do in Fusion tends to be a left to right, top to bottom workflow. And well, if we start with the far left category, you're going to notice new component. Now, we're not building an assembly, so we could skip over that straight into creating a sketch. Now, also, I will recommend if any of you have questions at any time, feel free to throw them in chat and we'll get to them as soon as we can, as long as it's about the subjects that you see in front of you. So this is the first mistake I think a lot of people get caught up in, is they think too much about the planes that they work in. Now, as I tell anybody and everybody, I ignore this completely because all we are trying to do is to create our sketch. Now, I say sketch, this is not a drawing. We want to create a sketch, turn it into a model, and then jump to a drawing. But I need to create that sketch, and in most cases, I need to anchor this thing to the actual origin. So now, for most of you, you may use a workflow, or you've thought of using a workflow of drawing a bunch of lines. Now, I'm going to show you why you may not want to do something like this. And the first and foremost case is, no matter how hard I try on this last segment, I still need to go back, add some more constraints to this thing. For example, I would like to make these two guys parallel to each other. And just like that, I've got my L profile. Now I'm going to undo this and show you a little better technique. Now, for those of you that know me, I love rectangles. Rectangles are extremely dangerous when it comes to drawing parts and part profiles. For example, with the ability to use two rectangles, you saw how I created rectangle A and then I created rectangle B, still achieving the task of a closed profile that I'm going to use later to extrude or revolve or do anything of that nature. Now, the big thing here is my number one rule when it comes to sketches is to remember nobody sees your sketch. And the reason why that's so important is right now, although I have two profiles in play, if I was to go ahead and extrude this, which anybody that's known me or taken any of my classes knows that it is much smarter at the end of the day to proof of concept your design, as you guys are seeing here, is I still ended up with an L bracket, right? Lastly, at some point, we're going to end up adding a fillet to this. Now, again, I'm not being precise with anything yet because this is the great world of Fusion and working almost as if it is modeling clay. So with the creation of everything I've done so far, if you look down at my bottom timeline, this is where I think a lot of people confuse things because, again, we have an order or we have a linear path of a timeline. So from creating that sketch in the background to extruding its thickness and then lastly adding a fillet. Now, again, this is common mistakes I see, but what good is adding dimensions to something if you physically can't sketch it in the first place and get the profile and the shape roughly of what you want? Because what you're gonna see here is I can quickly jump back to my sketch at any time, and I'm gonna go ahead and now use the sketch dimension tool. But what I would recommend is notice where this tool is, right? So the sketch dimension tool is one of the last things you wanna do when it comes to this list under create. This is why, again, I highly recommend ignoring dimensions at first, sketching out what you want, adding your features, playing around with the constraints as well as things like construction lines, because I can prove this out in most cases faster than most people would think to get their dimensions in. And the amount of times I've had to personally throw away a sketch and start over usually exceeds the number of times that I got it right the first time, right? So I can't remember if we were 250 thick or if we were a 1/2 inch thick, but as you guys can see, I can quickly now go in and dimension things. Now, this is another very important thing to remember here, is a lot of people have a tendency to dimension from point to point versus line to line, as some of you saw. Now, the reason why this is important is if you don't have two lines parallel to each other, this by default would have gave me an angle. And I can show you that here real quick. Let's say, for example, I throw an angled line in here. By going point to point, what you're gonna notice is I could still set a dimension. However, I'm lacking the knowledge of knowing these two lines are parallel. When dimensioning line to line, you're gonna notice it gives me an angular dimension because these are angles to each other. So again, that's just something to keep in mind. It's a really good tip at the end of the day. As you guys can see here, I'm missing my points. Now, another really good thing to keep in mind is I can actually tie two dimensions together. So as you guys can see, I went back up to my 1/4 inch dimension. I clicked it. That is D7. It's the 7th dimension I've typed in on the software. As you can see down below, yours may not say D7 if you're doing the same thing on your end. But as you can see, these two are now tied together. So if I go back and reference my drawing in this case and realize I messed up, that is not a 1/4 inch, it's a 1/2 inch dimension. By typing this in, you're gonna notice that it's automatically changed my other one for me. So again, I know I'm moving a little quick here, but I wanted to give you guys just a picture of what I do at the end of the day. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and pivot into my extrude. I'm at 1.5, so everything is good there. Lastly, I'm gonna go to my fillet and edit that fillet, right? Of course, we never want square corners. We're gonna add the fillet here for strength or something of that nature. But again, simple enough, by dropping a couple of rectangles, as I'm gonna do again here and probably blow some of your guys' minds, but I can quickly proof of concept what I need long before I ever turn around and have to go back and get caught up in the dimensions and breaking things. So the second time round, I'm gonna go ahead and do the same exact thing. However, I'm gonna change up the flow of how I create that profile, right? So again, we create our sketch, we pick whatever plane we want. This time, I may actually dimension with a rectangle up and a rectangle out. So again, nothing more than a couple of rectangles here to create my L-shaped profile. If you caught that sketch before when I did lines, I always think in the number of clicks, right? So as you can see, I would have a ton of mouse clicks to be able to generate, a straight line series of events versus quickly creating rectangles. And now in this case, we're gonna work with two profiles. So again, to step the ante up, I'm gonna show you guys a little secret here, is if you use S, which is a shortcut key on your keyboard, I can simply go in and move not only from my sketch shortcuts, but I can actually jump directly out of this sketch into my extrude function. Again, E for extrude for you guys that are advanced users, because this is now two profiles I'm working with. Again, we know this is gonna be 1.5. We're gonna add that fillet back up into the back corner at 250. And then from that, as you can see, we just rinse and repeat. I could go back to that original sketch. I can add my dimensions here. Now, what I'm gonna show you here is this time I can't click the bottom because we're dealing with two different rectangle edges, right? So again, in this use case, I need to go line to line as I was talking about. Now I could single line my outside areas, again, 0.5. Now I could add a second 0.5 here, but in this case, because of how I created my rectangles, I have two simple short edges that I can now equal to each other, right? So again, the same thing happens here. If we go 250 on this one, you're gonna notice that that other one changes. Again, this is just why I like the rectangle method more than other techniques. Now, something else I want to show you, and I see this all the time. I don't know if this is a pet peeve or when somebody posts on Facebook or they have an issue and they say, hey, there's something wrong with my sketch. However, they have a tendency to have blue lines still on their sketch. So as any of you may know, is if you have blue lines or a blue point in the corner for things like circles, if I click and drag this one, this is going to tell me that it's not fully constrained. The other thing I can do at the end of the day is if I go over to my sketches area and I expand this out, currently, if you notice, I have this little pencil, which means my sketch is currently editable. Now, what does that mean? That means I need to go in and I can change it. I can edit things still at the sketch level. If I go in and I add this last dimension in here, again, we're going to go back to the 0.5 like we should, but you're going to notice now on the left, you can see that this now has a padlock, which signals that this is a fully constrained sketch. Again, this is a common problem I see is that if your sketch isn't fully constrained, then you're going to cause downstream problems. So again, I could say finish sketch here. We have a whole nother rectangle shape. Again, L profile is all we were going for. We've done that now with two completely different sketches, right? We did a rectangle and a rectangle. We've done two rectangles stacked out from each other. Lastly, if you wanted to, you could Tetris block this up even, right? So I'm going to do this a third way, give you guys a few more pointers when it comes to this. Again, I'm overlapping them. So the reason why I say Tetris block is because each little area or each little profile, as it's referred to, is now its own contained area. So again, this allows me to now, outside the box thinking, right? 0.5 the outside. Now the bottom is going to be 3. The left side is going to be 2. As you can see, based on how I've set this all up, oh, we don't want to add that last dimension, right? We want to use a constraint of equals. But I'm able to pull all my dimensions from a single line, not between two lines, right? So again, just a little different thought process. We want to make sure we're fully constrained. If we were not fully constrained, I'm going to show this to you guys. Let's say we ditch the equals to this time, right? So we're going to go ahead and highlight that little constraint there. Actually, I just want the constraint. So let's click and hold. And with that, we can say equal constraint and delete it. So we still have the ability to edit one side. Well, what will happen if you don't fully constrain something? As you guys are seeing me do here, I just said E for extrude. I'm going to go negative this time, 1.5. But if for some reason the sketch is left on and somebody is to click and drag, notice what happens to my part profile. So again, this is kind of a secret method that if we weren't dimensioning our sketch right off the start. So again, I'm going to go ahead and go in and edit my sketch. Let's say, for example, I don't have these dimensions on here. Back into my solid model is if I was trying to make this fit a little better or change my profile based on what my needs are or my mounting locations, you can see I can still manipulate that sketch due to the fact that it's not constrained. Again, this is a really neat process if you were going to actually mount this to something. Or next week, you guys might want to catch it where we talk about adding features onto the two flats of this L bracket. But as you can see, if I needed it to be taller on the fly, it's easier for me to drag, get it close, eyeball whatever it is I'm trying to do, and then finally go back and edit that sketch. As you're seeing me do on my timeline, I'm right-click editing sketch, or I could do that from the design tree on the left. You can also double-click, as some of you saw me do. But I can finally come back and dimension that, right? Maybe it actually needed to be 3 by 5, right? And with that, we're going to send this over to somebody that does some sheet metal work. So maybe we're going to work with, some 100 thou thick aluminum. Again, I know I should use the sheet metal tool, guys. I'm just trying to give you a good example of how you can utilize using constraints, one, to make sure that you don't fail at your design, but two, saving the last constraint, which is dimensions till the end, allowing you to go back and change up and do whatever it is that you need to do to successfully complete that part, right? So again, as you guys can see, the last pointer I'm going to give you, this is a preference change. I know a lot of people are always curious about when I'm doing something like this. You guys are seeing me drop these rectangles very quickly with 0 sense of scale. And then upon dropping those rectangles, if I go to dimension this, is my entire drawing is scaling up and scaling down. So how you would set that preference is right through your preference menu. We're going to go ahead and go to the design area. And what I want to use is this not auto hide sketch, but scale entire sketch at first dimension, right? So the other one that I do see people that always question is once I extrude something, as some of you guys have seen, is the ability for that sketch to turn on and turn off. It is auto hiding the sketch on feature creation. Now the features are the things in our timeline to include the extrude feature, right? So again, I prefer to scale my entire sketch. This will keep things from breaking and getting a little crazy, as well as the auto hide sketch on feature creation option. If you don't want your sketch to turn off, for example, as soon as I do this extrude here, you'll notice my sketch turns off. You could also change that as well. So guys, I'm going to leave you to it, and I do always have to hit you with it. If you guys do like this content and you want to support us in any way possible, obviously like, subscribe, sharing our content is huge, but we also offer a buy me a steak and buy me a beer program. If you feel like giving more, or we've answered some questions on your end that you may have had, or if you learned something new. Now, don't forget, you could also buy your Fusion 360. I say Fusion 360, it's Autodesk Fusion, directly from us at CAD4CAM. We also offer support and training. And with that, as you guys know, all the beer purchases as well as steaks help us to fund things and do free trainings for the community. Again, you can find us here in Tulsa. Here, what is that? We're a little over a month out. So here at the end of June, we will be in Tulsa, ready to go. Again, you guys can get signed up. I've had people fly in when we were down in Springs, Texas, just north of Houston, all the way from the Bay Area to get this training. So as always, guys, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we see you guys back here. I don't know, are we going to do something on Wednesday? Find out what we're going to do on Wednesday as well. We will be here on Friday as well.